Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 7.5, if you will, of Hackspert. Um, so today, we will be extending our session 7 workshop on Firebase and we're going to be doing a little extra content for y'all. And the reason why this is recorded is because originally we planned to include this in our session 7 workshop, but we unfortunately ran out of time and we planned for too much. So hence I am going to be recording this, and it's just going to be me. It's going to be quite lonely, but today we'll be covering authentication. So, and obviously, um, if you've never heard of this word before, it may sound like, very, very odd word. Like why are we using this? Why is this useful for our apps? So let's get into an introduction on authentication. But before we do that, we're going to be doing a little bit of recap on how to use async storage, because we're also going to be using this in our demo later. If you forgot from last week's workshop, from session 6 workshop, should have already learned that async storage is a way of storing key value pairs on our local storage. And the way you use it is you npm install the React Native async storage package, and then you can then import it in your apps, like so. And in terms of using it, the main functionality that we will be using from async storage is the async storage.set item, which allows us to set a key and a value pair. So ball and up, for example, and then we are then able to call get item on the key to get the value of the pair, the key value pair. And if you forgot what all this try catch stuff is, essentially, because we are awaiting this, we have the await keyword here. It means that this whole thing could fail. This whole function could fail. And so in the case that it fails, we have to go to the catch. The code specified in the catch part is run. And it's very intuitive, try catch. So let's get into authentication now. But first, what is authentication, right? Authentication actually refers to an app's way of knowing who is currently using the app. If you've ever been prompted, by in your apps to sign in using, for example, Google, Facebook, GitHub, you're doing authentication, right? But why does the app need authentication? Well, after identifying a user, an app can restrict the data that this user is allowed to access and restrict the actions that this user is authorized to do, and many more other things, such as, after it learns who you are, they may do some sort of ad targeting or stealing your data and selling it to some big company. Who knows, right? This is what authentication is useful for. But if you're still a little bit unclear, let's get into like a small example. For example, Spotify. I'm sure many or most of you know what Spotify is. If you don't, it's basically a music platform where you can log in and then you can listen to many songs online, essentially. And so let's say that we have 2 users, Alex and Miles, and they open their Spotify app and up pops a login screen, right? So and of course, Spotify allows them many different ways of logging in. Let's say that, Alex first logs in with Facebook, okay? And Spotify immediately goes like, okay, Alex is logged in, we'll show his, favorite playlists, his favorite libraries and song preferences all on the home page. And this is what we mean by restricting data, right? Notice that, because Miles has not logged in as a user Alex, he is not able to access the same song preferences and playlists as Alex. And this app is only able to know this by authentication. Similarly, for Miles, let's say Miles logs in using Google. Spotify will display Miles's song preferences, playlists, and libraries on the home page. Alex is not able to access this information. Furthermore, let's say that, for example's sake, that Miles has paid for Spotify Premium, okay, while Alex has not. Okay, since Miles has signed in, Spotify will enable all of the Spotify Premium features, such as no ads to play that Miles has paid for, and Alex will get no such benefits when he has logged in. And Spotify is only able to do this because it has the ability to authenticate its users. It is able to find out who is currently using the app, and then it is able to decide, okay, is this guy allowed? Is this person allowed to have Spotify Premium features? And this is what we mean by restricting actions. Okay. So, we've talked a lot about authentication, why an app would want to use authentication, but why talk about this in a Firebase workshop, right? And that is because Firebase has actually integrated its own authentication for us. And what this means is that Firebase has coded all of the complicated authentication code, and all we need to do is know how to use it. And so, first of all, we need to know that using Firebase, we can confirm a user's identity and create different profiles. And these different users are stored in the Firebase or in the Firestore. So all we need as developers is know how to set up a credentials check. And if you see on the image here, Firebase allows login using Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and many more. And these in authentication terminology, like Google, Facebook, these are called sign-in providers. And so as you can see, Firebase allowed all of these different sign-in providers to sign their users in. So if we go back to the example, Facebook, Apple, and Google, and Spotify are sign-in providers in this case. So let's see how we can use authentication in Firebase. So if you go to the Firestore and you go to the authentication tab, you will be able to enable all of these sign-in providers listed below. And the reason why we need to enable these is because Firebase has by default disabled all of these sign-in providers, and you need to manually enable this. And this is for various security reasons, right? And if you see you'll see that you notice that there are going to be a lot of sign-in providers, and you may go like, oh, how do I log in using Google, or how do I use Facebook authentication? And unfortunately for React Native, the only sign-in providers that are built into Firebase are anonymous authentication, which is the thing that we'll be demoing today, and email and password authentication over here. If you want to use other sign-in providers such as Google or Facebook, you may need to install other third-party libraries using npm install and stuff. And but that being said, even if you install the third-party libraries, the methodology and workflow for all of these sign-in providers are quite similar. And for this reason, for this workshop, we will only be covering anonymous authentication. And the goal is so that you can apply this whenever you want to do email or password authentication and the like. So let's jump ahead into how to use Firebase authentication. First of all, we need to do some setup. So Firebase provides us with authentication methods in the Firebase object. And this is accessed through firebase.auth, the function. And so this is our Firebase authentication object. Okay, this will basically be the object through where we will call all of our authentication function. And again, if we go to the documentation for this Firebase.auth object, we'll see a bunch of complicated stuff. But if we go down to this method, to the methods section, I'm going to zoom in so you can see. We go down to the methods section, you'll see so many different functions that we can call. And among them, you might find, something called sign in with email and password, sign in anonymously. So, as I see, I wasn't lying that, this is sign in with email, password, and sign in anonymously is actually built in, right? So so as you probably guessed, we'll probably be using sign in anonymously today. So let's get back into it, right? So we've set up our auth object, as stated, and we will also need to know something else, and that is we will need to be able to keep track of the user that's currently signed in, right? How does our app know that someone has signed in? And that is through something called a method called on-auth state change. And this is a function, and as you may notice, it takes in an argument, and what it actually takes in as an argument is a callback function. If you don't know what callback functions are, it is basically a function that can be called inside of that function, inside of this function. I'm going to go over this later. So right now, actually, so what on-auth state change does is it is actually a listener. So it listens to any change in the authentication state, as you may have guessed, right? So what this means is that once a user has signed in or signed out, this auth state change function will detect it, and it will call the function that is specified in the arguments. In this case, our function currently does nothing. But this function can take in a user parameter, and using this user, we can access the information about the user that are signed in. So this is very important, and if you're still confused about what it's doing, we will see why this listener is useful later. Let me go back. Let me get my pointer back. So now that we know how to detect when a user has logged in or logged out, how about actually logging in and logging out? So let's see how we do that. So for signing in with Firebase, again, we'll be using anonymous sign-in. So we'll be using the method auth.signin anonymously. And this function is a promise, so we need to use the await keyword. And this promise doesn't resolve into anything, so we don't need to create a return value. And what this does is quite explanatory. It signs the user in, right? And once it signs the user in, if we have set up our listener back here, it will call this function inside here, and we are able to access user.uid. This a variable called user.uid inside of this function, and that will be a randomly generated, hopefully a randomly generated user ID. This is still complicated, we'll see later what this means in the demo. Right, so we've learned how to sign in. Obviously, we want to know how to sign our users out. This is also very simple, which we simply call auth.signout. And again, this function returns a promise, so we need to use the await keyword. And this promise doesn't resolve into anything, so we don't need to create a return value, such as const value equals await auth.signout. Right, so before we get into demo, I want to talk about a side note, which is Firebase security rules. Security rules are, a streamlined method to put checks and restrictions in place on your data. So, and this is done inside of the Firebase console. So, basically, it allows us to set custom restrictions on different users. And, if this sounds like very familiar to what we're already doing, you can think of it as another layer of security that Firebase has allowed us to add. And, so that the app is not the only place that is solely responsible for setting restrictions. The app can, of course, the app can also, for example, let's take Spotify as an example, right? If the app detects that a user has logged in, and that user has Spotify premium privileges, for example, it does all of the restrictions, setting the restrictions and allowing the user to access these premium features on its own. And you can think of Firebase security rules as like another layer of adding these checks. And because it is another layer, we probably won't be going through this, at least for this workshop. But in a lot of like big scale apps, like in a lot of apps that like are really big and are very and have a lot of users, for example, have a lot of different types of users. Security rules are often a very useful way of setting restriction on these different users. All right, so now that we've learned about what Firebase authentication is, let's apply this to our fireside chats, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go to our fireside chats code. And this is what our Firechats app currently looks like. You know, we can log in and it just takes us to this fireside chats little screen. And you know, you'll see a new profile screen here, but this can be, we'll cover this, what this means later. Okay, so currently, you know, we can type a message. And if I go to the Firebase console, which is here, you know, you'll see that it gets all of our app currently gets all of the messages in this chat room collection. And I'm not lying. See, if you see hello and my and hello world, these messages are automatically grabbed from the database itself, and we can also send our own messages. So I'm going to be typing on my keyboard, but you know, obviously in an actual phone, I'd be typing using the keypad. But I'm going to be typing using my keyboard, so don't be scared. This is not magic. So this, for example, if I type a new message, I will send a message as anonymous, and of course the message text will be new message, and as you can see, you'll be able to see that I sent the message at this time. You now know when this is being recorded. That's pretty cool. So yeah, but currently there isn't any way for a user to authenticate itself. If you see the UID is 0, and if you go to the chat screen, you'll see that it is because I have set the current user ID as 0. Okay, it is just a hard-coded. Every user that now sends a message will now have a UID 0, and of course that's not what we want. Our app wants to be able to log in its users with a unique user ID that's anonymous, of course. So let's change that, right? So I'm going to delete this guy. Well, actually, I'll leave it here. Okay, so if we see our home, if we go back to our home screen, you know, obviously, our app there's a login button and a logout button, and when we click login, currently this login button calls the handle login function, and currently it does nothing, right? So, whoops, you guys should not have. Okay, anyway, so I really need to turn off these notifications, but yeah, anyways. So there you see navigation.navigate. What this does is essentially it does nothing except just navigate onto our screen, as you can see. So obviously we need to change that. So, oh my goodness. So if you play Genshin, you'll know what that conversation is about, but that's fine. So obviously, you know, we've learned about what is happening. Like we learned about these sign-in anonymously methods. So let's go ahead and use it. But before that, you know, we obviously want to do some steps before enabling, before we do this. So first of all, just as a review, if we go to project settings and you go to general and you scroll down, you'll see all of this config stuff in our database. So as we covered in session 7, you want to copy and paste this, go to our config and copy and paste it. I've already done so. And now we need to do some setup. So if you remember from our workshop, you'll see a const auth equals the firebase.firestore. Not firestore, sorry, firespace.auth. And remember that this is our auth object that we can then call authentication methods in. Obviously, we want our app. Why am I saying obviously so much? I don't know. But anyways, so we want our app, our entire project to be able to know about this object. So we will do export. And and if you'll see in the, let's see that this is fine. This error is fine. So if you go back to home screen, you'll see that I have imported. I've imported auth from Firebase/config. And now home screen can now use the auth object. Also, another important note is that I have already pre-installed async storage and have imported it just as I have done just as I have shown in the slides. So if you're still iffy on how to get this into our apps, you can refer to session 6 where we covered async storage, I believe. Okay, so and the last step is to enable anonymous storage. So if we go to here, we see we're in Firestore right now, but if we go to authentication at the left sidebar, you'll see, that all as I see, I have all these anonymous users because of like testing and stuff. So this is an interesting history. But if you go to sign-in methods, you'll see that I already have anonymous enabled. So all you need to do is if you want to disable or enable it, you just enable it like this, like so. Right, so now we've done all of the setup. We've set up everything. Everything is good to go. Let's start using auth in our apps. So let's say that our user clicks our button and calls the handle login function. What do we want it to do? Well, we want it to call await auth.sign-in anonymously, right? So obviously this is an await, so we should try catch this. Put this up here. Something's wrong with my keyboard again. Await auth.sign-in anonymously. So if we see here, we'll be, oh, sorry. So if, hi, sorry about that. I ran into some technical difficulties. So as we see, we've awaited sign in anonymously. So now all we need to do is wrap it in a try catch as so. And so we are done with basically with logging in. But how does our app actually know about that our user has signed in? And obviously, I keep saying obviously. So as we've covered before, we need to add a listener, and we add this listener through auth.on-auth state changed. So remember that this function takes in a callback function as its argument. So we can do user, and then inside we can access this the user that has signed in. So how do we do this? Well, first we need to check the user actually exists, and then we are able to access our user ID, as I stated before, by const uid equals to user.uid. And that is because when sign in anonymously, sign our user in, it will call the on-auth state change variable is called. And for if a user has signed in anonymously, Firebase creates a new randomly generated UID for our anonymous user. And this can be accessed through user.uid. So we can then store this UID into our async storage, like so. If we do await async storage dot set item user and UID. So we, as seen here, we are able to, and Firebase, and we have an error where await is only allowed inside of an async function. So let's put the async keyword in here, and we're not getting shouted anymore. Cool. So again, we are using a lot of awaits, so we should wrap this in a try catch, right? So let's wrap this in a try catch. Try catch. Console.log e. We have also missed something else, and that is to, aside from setting the user as the new user ID, we also want to be able to set a display name for our user. So display name, and by default, because we are using anonymous sign-in, we'll call this user anonymous. So there. And later, you'll see that we'll be able to change this display name to something else that the user wants. And so this display name is local storage will come in handy. Okay, so final step is after we've done all of our authentication, all of our user checks, we simply just want to navigate fireside chats, because our user has now logged in. Let's get him into the chats function. And so, for example, if I console.log here, if I console.log our UID, and you'll see that if I log in, and I may need to reload it. So yeah, if I log in, I see that it automatically logs me in, which is strange. It shouldn't be doing that. This may be due to state change. So we will ignore this error because this may change after we have added another state into this. Okay, so now that we've done our handle login function, we obviously want our users to be able to log out. So if similar as before, we have the try catch, and we want to await auth.sign out, just as we covered in the slides. Now that our user has signed out, we don't want our user, this sign out will obviously trigger the on-off state change. But on this trigger, user will be undefined. And so this if statement will not be called. This if statement will not be true. And so our listener will essentially do nothing, is the hope. So we also need to be able to do other things after we've signed out, and that is to set our user ID as empty string, because there is no user currently signed in. And similarly for the display name, we want to have our username as empty string again. So if we go back here, hopefully if we log out and then we log back in again, yes, we see here that our user has a new user ID. And so whenever we type, and so, oh, this hasn't been implemented yet, but the hope is that if we type a new message, our app will now post to the new database, to our Firestore, with we'll post to our Firestore with, instead of user ID as 0, let me go back to here. Instead of it being UID of 0, hopefully it will be a UID of this UID that we've stored. That is the hope. So we obviously need to code this part because currently our code doesn't do this. So let's get started, right? So if you are watching this recording, know that all of the authentication parts of the workshop is over. For this demo, we've already finished our authentication and we don't need to worry about it anymore. All that's left for us to do is to use this authentication in our apps. And the way we use it is through async storage. So as you see in chat screen, I've already started I've already imported async storage. And in get current user, you'll see that there's a post Firebase to do. And currently in get current user, all we do is set our current user state variable to a hard-coded 0. And of course, this is not what we want. So let's get rid of this. And let's put everything into a try catch because we're going to be using async storage. What we want to do first is get our current ID from our local storage that we have stored in our home screen. Okay, so the way we do this is const ID equals await async storage dot get item user. Sorry about this. Oops. And then we should also check if ID equals to null. If it doesn't equal to null and it doesn't equal to empty string, it means that our user is currently a valid user. So we want to be able to set our current user, set the current state variable as the ID that we have gotten. And then we're done. So now this entire chat screen variable, this entire chat screen function, this entire component now knows about our current user ID and can access this current user ID through the current user variable, state variable. Okay. And notice that we call get current user at the start when we render the app. So now there's another thing that we need to do, and that is in the add messages function. So if you see in the add messages function, which is where we post our message onto the database, as you see here through db.add, we specify the display name as name or anonymous. And what this code does is if name is defined, then it will post name, it will post the name variable as a display name. Otherwise, if name is not defined, it will post anonymous. It will post anonymous. So let's get rid of this because we have defined name up here. There's a little bit of repeat code, but what we see here now is that we have defined a name variable as anonymous, and every time we add this new message to our database, we see that we will add the anonymous name. And so this is obviously not what we want. We want to be able to use, instead of using a hard-coded anonymous, we want to be able to get the current display name. From our async storage. So now that we have get item, you'll notice that this actually is behavioral-wise, it is the same thing because currently we have stored anonymous as our current display name. So for example, if you'll see that our current user ID is this PNNLR string, and let's say that we typed a new message. Let's see, what should I say? I love Firebase. Okay, so we've sent it. Let's go to our Firestore, and you'll see that there is a new message. I love Firebase with UID PNNLR, right? And so on. And this is exactly what we want. So you'll see that because this user has sent it, it is on the right side. And if we go back, and we click log out, and then we log back in again, Firebase gives us a new user ID, right? That is exactly what we want. And you'll see that this other user that has posted onto the database is now on the left side, another person called anonymous. Okay, so and now if we, for example, if we type a new message, I love Firebase authentication. And we go back to our Firestore, you'll see that there's a new message called I love Firebase authentication with, and this UID string exactly matches the UID string that we have specified, that we have created, randomly generated by signing anonymously. So that is amazing. We have essentially done authentication for our apps. So, but there's one problem, right? And that is, if you'll see here that this anonymous and this anonymous are actually two different people. But everyone is named anonymous. How are you supposed to tell who is who, right? So essentially, what we want is for the users to be able to change their name, right? And that is why I have created a profile screen at the side. And the hope is that the users will be able to type whatever profile name they want, new name, and save it. Then the entire app will know about this new user, and it will be able to update the database, and it will be able to, and any new message that it posts will have its new display name. So if we go to profile screen here, but before that, I'm gonna go ahead and log in as a new user, this QQ, and I'm gonna add a few new, I'm gonna add some random message. Random message 1. I'm sorry, I can create with more creative ones, but random message 2. And then woo woo. So there's three messages, and we'll see here that the three messages are, where are they? Random message 1 here with the UID, random, and then we'll be able to ooh here, and I wonder where random message 2 is. Random message 2 is here. So yeah, but now notice that they all have display name is anonymous, and UID as something else. UID as the same thing that we created for whenever we logged in. But first, but then now let's say that this user has suddenly the idea that, oh, I want to change my name. So he goes to the profile screen, and he wants to know what his current display name is. So in our function get display name here, notice that get display name is first called when the component is rendered, and what it should do is set the state variable to our current display name. And that is so far very simple, right? Because all we need to do is do what we've done before, is we wrap everything in a try catch. Const display name equals to await async storage dot get item display name. So we've gotten our display name from local storage, and then all we need to now do is set name as display name, right? And then we, of course, this is throwing try catch error at me, so I need to come to log E. And there we are. We're done with this function. And as you can see, once our component is rendered, it shows anonymous. It shows the anonymous name. And that is because our current name in the database, in our local storage, is anonymous. So once the user goes to this profile screen, it'll be able to see that, oh, okay, so my current display name is anonymous. And if he decides to change that, he or she decides to change it, you'll see that, and it hits the save button. So this save button, if you see here, save, it has an on press of handle submit. Okay, so and in handle submit here, you don't need to worry about handle change. Handle change is part of the on text, so such that if it will update the variable whenever this text is changed. So let's say that we have handle submit. Handle submit is called. It will call update display name with the name variable, and name variable is obviously access to the state variable here. Okay, so right. So now we go back up the update display name. And as we see here, nothing has been implemented. So obviously we need to implement it. How do we implement this? Well, we need this function to do two things. Okay, first thing is to change our local display name to the new display name. Why do we need to do this? This is so that for every subsequent message that we now send, it will contain our new display name. So that every new message you send, Firebase now knows that, okay, we'll now have the new display name. But we don't want just this, right? We want all of the old messages to contain our new display name as well. So number two is to update all previous messages in the database that this user sent to contain the new display name instead of the old display name. For most cases, and for this case as well, our old display name is anonymous. Okay, so we need to do two things, and of course we need to do the second thing because we need other users to see the consistency of the name change from the old message to the new message. So say you're a user and you're texting someone, and suddenly his name has always been anonymous, and suddenly he sends you a message with the name Firebase Lover 123, and you don't even know if this guy is the same person as this person you were sending messages with before. So you need to see the consistency of the name change, and we need to be able to do that. So we need to be able to do two things, right? I'm gonna put this in tab. Okay, for more consistency. So first things first, we should do our first thing, right? So first, if we try catch everything into a, you may have noticed a pattern. Everything is going to be in a try catch. What do we need to do now? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and code the second part first. So first, I want to be able to get the user ID from our local storage. So I'm going to say that in a variable. So const ID equals to await async storage dot get item user. Okay, and if you forgot, user is the user ID that we saved. So for example, if you see home screen, this user ID we have saved user ID to value as the UID, the randomly generated UID whenever we logged in anonymously. And then next is to query all of the messages that this user has sent, okay, that my user has sent. So const query equals to db.collection. If you're unfamiliar with this syntax, then you need to maybe rewatch the recording for session 7. This is where we covered this material, where UID, in our query, we want to specify all messages where our UID is equal to this current ID, okay? So, and if you forgot, chat room is our collection. So we have chat room dot document. So query is now our query, obviously. So to able to execute this query, we create a new variable called query snapshot. Did I spell query wrong? Yeah, I did. Query snapshot. equals to await query.get. And now query.snapshot will contain an array of all of the messages where the UID, this UID field here, is equal to the ID of our current user. It essentially gets an array of all of the messages that the user has previously sent. Okay, and so we want to be able to loop over this array. So we do query.snapshot.for each, and then we do async because it is an async function, and this for each takes in a doc. So this doc will be our message, and then we need to wrap this in another try catch, unfortunately. And then so right now doc is our message. Okay, doc is this document here. So one document has all of these fields, and as if you may remember it, we can access this through a JavaScript, as any JavaScript object. So we should now update the display name of this single message. And how do we do that? Well, if you remember back to session 7 where you learned about database.update, where we learned how to update update the name, the display name. So so we do await db.collection chat room, of course, and then doc.id. This doc.id is the ID of our doc that we're looping over, okay? And then we do .update. And we update this. The only thing that we're going to update is the display name field over here, okay? This display name field. And we're going to update this to our new name, to this name. And this name comes from this name variable that we passed in to the function originally. Name. Okay. So, and now we should be done, right? This will get all of the snapshots, all of the messages, and it will update the display name to our new name that we specified in our app. So that's step 1 done, okay? That's step 1 done. But we need to do step 2, okay? So this is, I mean, step 2 done, sorry. We need to be able to do step 1. So step 2, we've updated all of the previous messages. Now let's do step 1. We need to change our local display name to the new display name. Okay, that sounds very familiar. That sounds very similar to what we have already done. So let's do it. So all we need to do actually is just do await async storage dot set item display name as our new name. And then now our local storage has stored our new name. So whenever we go back to chat screen and we get our new display name, we will be able to post this new display name as the display name field. I am saying display name a lot. Sorry if this confuses you. But yeah, so we're actually done with our app. If you see here, let me just test it now. So if I go to profile and I for example say new name, what should I call it? Hack Sprint STW. This is our new display name. If I click save, okay, nothing happens. Hopefully something has happened though in our messages. So if you go here, yes, it worked. So if you see in random message 1, remember the random messages that I sent. In random message 1, display name has now been changed to Hack Spring. Oh, I spelled Hack Spring wrong, but Hack Spring for the win. And if we go to random message 2, also Hack Spring for the win. And if we go to if we go to uwu, the message uwu, remember these are the 3 messages that I sent. Again, we can go back and check. We sent 3 messages, random message 1, random message 2, and uwu, and the display name has been changed to Hack Spring for the win. Okay, And so if you go back to the chat screen, any subsequent message that we send, so OWO, if you type OWO, you'll see that where is it? This is getting a little tedious. I should memorize this. I should have better memory. All right, if you go to OWO, you'll see that the display name, instead of being anonymous now, is Hackspring for the win. All right. So to see that this actually works, the display name actually works, let's go back to our main page. Let's log out, and then we can log back in again as a new user. As you can see, we've logged in as a new user. And you'll see on the left here, instead of anonymous, our new name is now Hackspring for the win. This is amazing, right? So if you see here, so now we can change our name to Fireside. Let's change it to admin. There's always in every single app, there's always an account called admin. All right, this is lore. So we have a new display name called admin, and then if we send a new the last message of the day, you'll see that yes, indeed, last message of the day is sent by admin with his own unique ID that we specified here. And there we go. You know, our app is now done. We have done all of the authentication stuff. We have done all of the display name changing things, and we have learned how to use collection.update or doc.update. So there it is. So so thank you for coming. This is the end of the content that we're going to go through. I'm going to go back to the slides and look at this beautiful Sasuke GIF. And so this is the last workshop that Hack will be covering for this quarter for Hack Sprint. So, you know, if you're still listening to me rambling on about authentication, really kudos to you. Really kudos to you for pats on the back for sticking through our 7.5 workshops. And whether you are making an app for our Hack Sprint final project, or you are going to be hacking away at a React Native project in the future. I hope that these workshops have been a little useful to you, and we hope that you've learned some things and taken away some things from our workshops. And I wish you the best of luck in your hacking. Happy hacking. I will now end the recording. Oh, hello. You get to see my beautiful face. I cannot access the meeting panel.